Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Over the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.
And welcome back to Uncensored Beat, where you're going to find the unfiltered truth. My name is James Bradley.
And I'm Flor Blanco.
And today we have a returning guest, Christi, that's going to update us on the great work that she's doing in Sacramento and her legal efforts.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
Good. So we have a series of questions for you, and Florida is going to ask the first question.
Does California Senator Scott Weiner have an oath of office?
No, last week the Secretary of State confirmed that he has still not filed an oath of office. So I first notified him in January that he didn't have an oath, and it's now September, and he hasn't bothered to file one.
Is there anyone else in the California legislature that do not have an oath of office?
So last time I was on, I mentioned that I checked 25 people's oaths, and 20 of the 25 didn't have an oath. So I just checked a bunch more. I checked 8 assemblymen, and 1 of the 8 didn't have an oath. That is Joaquin Arambula. He's the assemblyman that introduced that bill to give down payment money to illegal aliens. And I checked 8 more state senators, and 4 of those 8 don't have O's. So those are Nancy Skinner, Susan Talamantes Eggman, John Laird, and Stephen Bradford. I also checked quite a few staffers, and none of the staffers had O's. So we're up to a lot of people now working without O's.
So why is it important that each of those members have an oath of office? And what are the consequences?
Oaths of office are required by both federal and state law. Anyone who's working without an oath is considered a foreign agent posing as a government agent, which is a felony subject to 3 years in prison.
Can you explain to the audience the 3 steps that you followed?
So I've kind of given up on statutory law. I went round and round with the government for years with statutory law and got nowhere. So now I'm trying common law. So in common law, there's it's a 3-step process. The first one is you notify them that they're breaking the law. So I did that in July. I sent them a notice of legal violations, opportunity to cure, asking them to please have everybody sign oaths and procure bonds. They didn't do that. So in August, I sent a writ of quo warranto, which is a notice basically saying you have to vacate office because you're working without legal jurisdiction. And I gave them a week to vacate office, and they didn't, nor did they sign oaths. So I just sent them yesterday. They were served with a certificate of default, basically saying, hey, you have knowingly and intentionally been violating the law all this time, and we need to force you out of office and, take legal action at this point.
Acting as a foreign agent seems to be a felony. Why would somebody want to commit a felony instead of refusing to sign an oath?
Acting as a foreign agent carries 3 years in prison. Passing laws that are unconstitutional is considered treason of oath. And treason of oath has much more serious consequences, up to and including death. So Scott Weiner is a lawyer. He understands the implications of the oath better than anyone. And so he's basically taken a calculated risk that if somebody goes after him, he's better off getting in trouble for not having an oath and going to jail for 3 years than getting in trouble for treason of oath and potentially being sentenced to death.
Christi, why are people not really looking at this as this being a big issue?
I have no idea. I think people just don't understand that it is a constitutional requirement. It's one of the most basic of basic constitutional requirements for both the federal and the state. There's actually quite a lot of state laws surrounding oaths and administration of oaths and what's valid and what's not and how they're to be done. And so I think if people understood how important of an issue this is, they would realize, why wouldn't somebody sign a piece of paper like, promising to uphold the constitutions? I mean, the fact that they won't should be a giant red flag that Scott Weiner does not have good intentions with his office, that he's knowingly committing treason of oath, and that's why he's not signing the oath.
Christi, tell us what learned helplessness is and how it applies to the situation.
So there's another group that has filed a writ of quo warranto against the Attorney General of Washington, who's currently running for governor of Washington. And I watched an interview with them about their writ of quo warranto. And in it, they said that they believed that the American public in general, was suffering from Stockholm syndrome. And that's not quite the correct term. I think the correct term is called learned helplessness, where we've been taught that we have no power and we just have to beg and plead and hope that somebody will pay attention to us. And the reality is that we gave the state Senate power. We offered them power to act in our best interests on our behalf. And we can take that power back. We do not have to comply or succumb to their tyrannical violations of laws. So this idea that you have to hire a lawyer or you need a legislator to fix it, or there needs to be some middleman between you and government accountability, is the learned helplessness. Like, we have been brainwashed to believe that we need a middleman or an intermediary to act on behalf of us, rather than us taking charge and demanding accountability ourselves.
Now, if these elected officials vacate office, what are the legal implications for them?
The state Senate needs to vacate the laws that they were involved in. So that means that every one of Weiner's votes need to be voided. And if there are any votes that were close margins and Weiner's vote makes it void, then the law needs to be void. And that actually goes for the other five that I've caught as well. So two that I know for sure will have to be voided is AB 28, which is the bill for an 11% excise tax on firearms and ammunition. That required 2/3 to pass, and it barely got 2/3 with Weiner. It barely got 2/3. So when you take Weiner's vote out, it's already voided. But then you have to take out Bradford, Laird, and Skinner, because they voted for it as well. Arambula didn't vote for it. He abstained. And then another one that has to be voided is ACA 1, which was a law that allows municipalities to impose additional taxes for what I call collectivism, for things like subsidized housing or giving down payments to people, that kind of thing. So that actually passed last year, but again, it required 2/3. It barely passed. And once you remove Weiner's vote, it doesn't pass anymore. And actually, all of the legislators that I've caught without O's voted for it. So once you get rid of all those votes, it has to be voided.
How does this affect the bills that he authored or co-authored?
All the bills that he authored, co-authored, and sponsored have to be voided because he had no legal standing to introduce, author, sponsor any kind of legislation. So all of that needs to be voided. And also important is the committees that he worked on. We talk about a lot about the things that Weiner pushed through, that he authored, that are terrible, but we don't talk about as much the behind the scenes work that he did to weaken bills that were aimed at protecting our constitutional rights. So an example is SB 1414, which is a law to make child sex trafficking a felony. And that's how it was originally written. And Weiner and Nancy Skinner and Stephen Bradford were all on the public safety committee. So 3 of the 5 senators on the public safety committee didn't have O's, and the public safety committee gutted it so that it only makes it a felony for some children in some circumstances instead of all children all the time. And so all 3 of those people, I mean, that law absolutely needs to be restored back to its original wording, because 3 of the 5 people who altered the wording were working unlawfully and had no jurisdiction to change the wording. Another one that needs to be voided as well is AB 1955, which Weiner co-authored. And that one is the one where schools are forbidden from telling parents what's going on with their children.
My understanding, there's quite a few lawsuits on 1955. So we're going to see a lot of activity here probably later this year or first part next year.
If we can get Weiner forced out of office, if we get enough people signing the petition and enough people calling every day, they will have to force Weiner out. And once they force Weiner out, all these bills have to be voided too. So it shouldn't take giant lawsuits. I mean, it should be a pretty simplistic, like, okay, we had a mass public humiliation campaign. It worked. He's forced out. And now all his laws have to go.
I love multiple strategies. One is through the electoral process or elections, but also legal process. But you have a very unique and a very sound approach as well.
My approach is administrative. Like, I don't want to get into partisan politics. I want to get into, hey, if you're going to write laws, you sure as hell have to follow them.
How do we get the state Senate to follow the laws?
If our legal system worked properly, I would just notify Rob Bonta, the Attorney General, or the San Francisco sheriff, and the sheriff would arrest him, and Rob Bonta would pull him out of office and prosecute him. But our legal system is broken. Our legislative system is broken. And the statutory law is the same thing. If I were to hire a lawyer to try to take him out, Rob Bonta gets sole discretion as to whether or not Weiner's thrown out. The thing that really works and will work now, and that is us taking our power back, is to demand that the state Senate comply with the laws. It's really straightforward. They have tacitly admitted that they're violating the laws. They are brazenly, like, in your face, the laws don't apply to us. So I've started a petition, and I'm hoping to get everybody to sign the petition so that there's a written ledger showing how many people want accountability from the state Senate. But the other thing that I think is more effective is to call the state Senate every day and ask them why they haven't forced Weiner out of office yet. Why are they conspiring to commit a felony? And why are they conspiring to violate rights by letting these people unlawfully pass laws? So calling the state Senate out on their conspiracy to evade the laws and to continue to allow these people work unlawfully, that is really our best bet right now. We also need to call Weiner's office every day and ask his staffers why Weiner won't sign an oath, why they haven't signed an oath. I forgot to mention that the Secretary of State confirmed that the 14 people that I know of who work for Weiner, none of those 14 people have taken oaths. So why are they working without an oath? Why is Weiner working without an oath? Why are they continually working for someone? Why are they committing a felony and conspiring to commit a felony by working under Scott Weiner when they know Scott Weiner is committing a felony? So I think a simple demanding accountability is what will do it. And we just need enough people calling. And it doesn't have to be thousands of people. I think, if 100 people start calling every day, that'll be enough to scare the state Senate and Weiner's office into complying with the laws. None of the staffers on the Public Safety Committee signed oaths, and none of the staffers on the Tax Oversight Committee signed oaths. All these people know that they're violating the constitutions by these policies and practices. That's why they're not signing oaths.
So under the letter of the law, they're technically foreign agents working, in government.
All of them need to go to jail. Not one staffer that I checked has an oath, a valid oath. None of them.
Can you give us the website so they can sign the petition?
My website is gwsandiego.net. And then the article about Weiner is pinned to the very top. And there's a link to the documents that they were served within that post.
Mhm.
And there's also a link to the petition that they can sign.
So Christy, isn't Scott Weiner running for re-election in 2024?
Sure is running for re-election. So if we can succeed in getting rid of him, getting the state Senate to vacate his seat prior to the election, then he won't be able to run anymore because he's being vacated for committing a felony, right? So at this point, it's too late to put another Democrat on the ballot. So if we can put enough pressure on the state Senate to get rid of him, then the Republican candidate, Yvette Corcoran, wins by default. So hopefully people in the San Francisco area are highly motivated to put pressure on the state Senate so that they can finally get rid of Scott Weiner and get a Republican in there.
Well, that concludes our interview today. Thank you so much, Christy, for joining us and that great information and action items for them to go to your website, sign the petition.
Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Whenever the next big attack
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.